We now connect with Director of Savills Hanoi, Matthew Powell, to learn more about Vietnam's resort real estate prospect in the time ahead. Well, thank you, Matthew, for joining us. So how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected resort real estate in Vietnam over the past couple of years?
So obviously it's very challenging with the lack of international tourists during the lockdown period. It was extremely challenging for the resort cities. You know, if we look at Da Nang, for an example, they had a very difficult couple of years. It's very difficult to maintain and operate these resorts without the customers, and it's a very expensive endeavor. So the hotels particularly were really struggling with staying open and maintaining the properties. Even you know, during the lockdown, while there was some domestic tourism, it was not necessarily sufficient. Coming to more recent months, we've seen this uptick in domestic tourism, particularly around the Tet holiday. A lot of resorts were active. You know, Phu Quoc has been doing very well. So it's now time to sort of to get things back to normal, hopefully. And you know, then to welcome back international tourists. But it's certainly been extremely challenging for resort operators and owners, but fingers crossed that most people have been able to survive. We're very much looking forward to the reopening of the borders in March 15th, and we're hoping that's going to be a real lifeline to the resort real estate sector.
In your opinion, what advantages and disadvantages does Vietnam have in terms of resort real estate development?
Vietnam's got a lot going for it. You know, it's a fantastic resort and hospitality location. We saw that, you know, prior to COVID. You know, Vietnam travel industry was booming. International arrivals were growing in huge numbers. Airport expansion was doing very well. You know, the coastline is fantastic. The natural environment, food, scenery, access, security, the number of international you know, airports and ports and how to access the country is very straightforward. So Vietnam's a fantastic tourism destination and got a lot going for it. And we also see that effect into the second home market and the holiday home market and international buyers looking to purchase property in Vietnam. Even during COVID, we've been working with many different international buyers looking at investment into resort property, who are fully confident of this rebound, as are we, you know, once international travel. That's the only limiting factor, is the international travel. In the immediate area, you know, competitors are, you know, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, countries like this. But Vietnam's really got a lot going for it above many of these locations. Plus price, you know, it can be more affordable compared to other resort destinations.
Now, what notable trends have been recorded in this market segment in recent years, especially taking into account the impacts of COVID-19?
We've seen some changes to the market. We've seen more resort development and more second home development in newer areas, particularly around Hanoi. But the traditional areas of Da Nang, Nha Trang, Phu Quoc also continue to develop very strongly. And we're also seeing a lot of activity in the north, so particularly Quang Ninh area. The developers themselves have been did look at diversifying locations, so perhaps locations closer to the city, where within a drive rather than within a flight. So that was a noticeable trend, certainly in the north of Vietnam. So, you know, rather than hopping on a flight, you know, a family group or friends can get together and drive a couple of hours down to Sam Son, Thanh Hoa, or around Hanoi. In the, you know, surrounding Hanoi, it's more of the you know, the nature resorts, the hills, the Hoa Binh areas, obviously, rather than, you know, beach-related activities. So this is a different type of product, and it's more that weekend retreat kind of thing. And we see that, you know, already active in Ba Vi. The closest beach, yeah, the drive down to Sam Son. It still has some way to go in terms of a, you know, fully developed tourist infrastructure and the natural environment, let's say. But it's already been active with companies like FLC, already have the active resort and golf there. Most developers will have projects going on there. There's Van Phu Invest has a project launching later this year, the Sun Group project. So it's certainly improving, and more facilities will start to come for sure. But it's early stages yet, let's say, but it's still very good access to Hanoi, so it's still very accessible. But one of the factors is that as travel becomes, flight travel becomes easier and more acceptable, let's say, then you know, a flight to sunnier climates and Da Nang and Nha Trang and Phu Quoc, you know, becomes easier and much more competition for resorts like Samsung. So, you know, Samsung and Tanhua really have to focus on what they're providing against competing provinces and competing locations.